The first thing his mother ever said to me was, "You can start by clearing the table." She thought I was the catering staff. I was wearing a $200 blouse and I had driven 3 hours to meet the woman my boyfriend called the most important person in his life. And she handed me a stack of dirty plates without making eye contact. I took the plates. I still think about that moment. About the choice I made in that second, to say nothing, to smile politely, to walk toward the kitchen like I belonged there. That choice set everything in motion. And 3 months later, it burned their world down. My name is Maya. And before I tell you what happened, I need to tell you who I am. Not who I appeared to be. Who I actually am. Because those two things, for most of my adult life, have been very different. I grew up wealthy. Genuinely, significantly wealthy, the kind of wealthy that is so old and so quiet that it doesn't announce itself. My father built a pharmaceutical company from nothing over 30 years. My mother came from a family that had been in shipping for 4 generations. We lived in a large house outside the city. I went to good schools. I never wanted for anything material. But my parents, particularly my father, had a philosophy about money and identity that shaped everything about how I moved through the world. Never let people know what you have, he told me when I was 12. You want to know who respects you for you? Don't tell them about the money. Make them show you who they are first. It was practical wisdom. Maybe too practical. Because I took it so deeply to heart that I had spent my entire adult life keeping my background almost entirely private. I drove a modest car. I dressed well but not flashily. I worked as an interior designer, genuinely, passionately, not as a hobby, and I built my own professional reputation from scratch, deliberately separate from my family name. My boyfriend, Daniel, knew I was comfortable. He knew I owned my apartment. He knew I had a good career. What he did not know, what very few people outside my family knew, was the full scale of what my family had built. I had been with Daniel for 11 months when he invited me to his family's estate for a long weekend. Estate is not an exaggeration. The Whitmore family had a property outside the city that was, functionally, a compound, a main house with 7 bedrooms, a guest house, formal gardens, a pool, and the particular atmosphere of a place that had been maintained for generations by people who were paid to be invisible. Daniel's family was what my father would have called loud money. New in generational terms. Very visible. Very proud of itself. And they had decided, within approximately 45 minutes of my arrival, exactly what I was. I arrived on a Friday evening. Daniel had driven separately, something about a work call he needed to finish, and so I pulled up to the Whitmore estate alone in my car, which was a 3-year-old Volvo that I loved and which looked deeply unremarkable next to the Range Rovers and Mercedes lined up in the circular drive. A woman I didn't recognize opened the front door before I could knock. She looked me up and down. Not subtly. With the comprehensive efficiency of someone making a rapid assessment. "Catering is around the back," she said. "Service entrance." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "For the party tonight." She glanced past me like she was looking for someone more important. "Around the back." "I'm Maya," I said. "I'm Daniel's girlfriend. He invited me for the weekend." Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth, more like recalibration. "Oh," she said. "Daniel's, yes. He mentioned he was bringing someone." A pause that was half a second too long. "Come in." That woman was Helen Whitmore. Daniel's mother. That was how we met. The party that evening was a dinner for about 20 people, family friends, business associates, a few cousins I was introduced to in a blur of names I immediately lost. Daniel arrived an hour after me, kissed me on the cheek, and was immediately absorbed into a conversation with his father across the room. I stood with a glass of wine and observed. The Whitmore family moved through their home with the ease of people who had never, for a single day, questioned whether they belonged somewhere. Daniel's father, Richard, was loud and expansive, the kind of man who told stories in a voice calibrated for the whole room. His older sister, Victoria, was sharp and polished and looked at me with an assessment in her eyes that she didn't bother to conceal. And then there was Helen. Helen spent the first hour of that evening directing me. Not rudely, exactly, there was a social deniability to everything she said. But the pattern was unmistakable. "Could you check on the appetizers in the kitchen, Maya? You don't mind, do you? Maya, would you refresh the drinks on the side table? The staff seems to have missed it. Maya, be a dear and let the caterers know we're ready for the next course." Daniel was across the room, deep in conversation, not watching. I did every single thing she asked. Not because I was weak. Not because I didn't understand what was happening. I did it because I was watching. Gathering information. Learning exactly who these people were when they thought they had correctly identified you. My father had taught me, make them show you who they are first. They were showing me. Comprehensively. Saturday was worse. I woke up early and came downstairs to find Victoria in the kitchen, on the phone, speaking at full volume about a renovation project she was doing on her vacation home. She looked up when I walked in. Looked back at her phone. Kept talking. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen island. I read a design magazine I'd found on the counter. Victoria finished her call and turned to me with an expression that was almost curious. "So what do you do?" she asked. The way someone asks when they're not particularly interested in the answer. "I'm an interior designer," I said. "Interior design." She said it the way people say things they find slightly quaint. "Residential?" "Residential and commercial," I said. "I just finished a hotel project in the city." "Which hotel?" I told her. She looked mildly surprised. It was a well-known boutique hotel, a project I was proud of. Then her expression recomposed into something neutral. "That's nice," she said. "Daniel didn't mention you had a job." "A job?" Like it was an amusing affectation. I smiled. Drank my coffee. Said nothing. But inside, in the very still center of me, something was clicking into place. The moment that crystallized everything happened on Saturday afternoon. There was a croquet set up on the lawn, the Whitmores were that kind of family, and a loose gathering of cousins and family friends playing in the sun. I had joined, and was actually enjoying myself, when Richard Whitmore came to stand beside me. Richard was the patriarch. The self-made man, or so the family narrative went, who had built the Whitmore import business into what it was today. He had not spoken more than 10 words to me since I arrived. Now he stood beside me on the lawn and looked at me with an expression that was not quite unfriendly but was certainly not warm. "Daniel tells me you're in design," he said. "Yes," I said. "Good industry." A pause. "Not a lot of money in it, though. For most people." I looked at him. "It depends on the practice." He watched someone take a croquet shot. "You're from the city originally?" "Yes." "Your family, what do they do?" And there it is, I thought. The real question. The one the whole weekend had been circling. "My father is in pharmaceuticals," I said. Which was true. Accurate. And revealed nothing. Richard nodded in the way people nod when they've heard a satisfying but not impressive answer. "Good steady industry," he said. And then he walked away. I stood on the lawn with my croquet mallet and I thought, he asked about my family to place me. To confirm the assessment they'd already made. They had placed me. They had placed me wrong. And the decision I'd been quietly making all weekend solidified into something clear and final. I was going to let them. For now. Sunday morning brought the conversation I had been anticipating since Friday. Helen found me alone on the back terrace with my coffee and my notebook. I sketched design ideas in the morning, it's a habit, and she sat down across from me with the air of someone who had decided to be gracious. Maya, she said. I want to speak frankly. Please do, I said. Daniel is at an important point in his life. His father is looking at him to step into a larger role in the business. The people Daniel surrounds himself with, professionally, personally, reflect on that. She folded her hands. We want Daniel to be happy. We want the people in his life to be appropriate. I looked at her steadily. Appropriate. Positioned for the life he's building, she said. We're not snobs, Maya. But the Whitmore family has a certain standing. And Daniel needs a partner who understands that world. I was quiet for a moment. What do you think I don't understand about it? I asked. Helen smiled the smile of someone who believes they are being kind. It's not about intelligence, dear. It's about background. The circles. The connections. She paused. Daniel's previous girlfriend came from the Harrington family. You may know them, Boston. That kind of background makes certain things easier. She thought she was letting me down gently. I picked up my coffee cup. Thank you for being honest with me, Helen, I said. She patted my hand. Actually patted it. I knew you'd understand. I understood perfectly. I just understood something entirely different than she thought. I drove home Sunday afternoon. Daniel walked me to my car and kissed me and said his family had loved me, which told me, in one sentence, everything I needed to know about how much he had actually been paying attention all weekend. They were wonderful, I said. Which was not a lie, technically. They had been wonderful data. I drove 3 hours home. I called my father. How was the weekend? He asked. Illuminating, I said. Dad. Do you know the Whitmore family? Import business. A pause. Richard Whitmore? Yes. I know of him, my father said carefully. Why? His son is the man I've been seeing. Another pause, longer. And, my father said. And his family spent the weekend auditioning me for inadequacy, I said. His mother told me I'm not appropriately positioned for their world. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in the particular dry tone he reserved for things he found genuinely funny. Maya. Would you like me to make a phone call? No, I said. I want to handle this myself. How? I thought about Helen's hand patting mine. About Richard's dismissal on the lawn. About Victoria's "that's nice" and Helen's around the back and the stack of dirty plates I had carried to the kitchen on Friday night with a smile on my face. I have a plan, I said. Here is what my father's company was, at the time of this story. The third largest pharmaceutical distribution company in the country. Annual revenue of approximately $2.4 billion. With a strategic partnership division that had been, for the past 18 months, quietly evaluating acquisition targets in adjacent industries. Including import and distribution businesses. Including, as it happened, the Whitmore family sector. I did not engineer what happened next. I want to be clear about that. The business conversation had been in motion long before I ever met Daniel. But I did make one phone call that accelerated a timeline. I called my father's chief strategy officer, a woman named Patricia, who had worked with our family for 15 years and was one of the sharpest people I'd ever known. Patricia, I said. The Whitmore Import Group. Where are we on that evaluation? Still in preliminary, she said. Why? Move it forward, I said. And schedule the introductory meeting. I'd like to attend. The call came to Richard Whitmore's office on a Wednesday. I know this because Daniel told me that evening, excited and slightly bewildered, that his father had received a meeting request from the Ashworth Group. Ashworth. My mother's family name. The name the company operated under. The name that, in our industry, opened doors instantly. Do you know them? Daniel asked. My dad was. He was pretty excited. They're huge. I've heard of them, I said. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday. At the Whitmore estate. Because Richard had insisted on hosting, naturally. And because Patricia, bless her, had arranged it that way. I dressed carefully on Friday morning. Not to impress. To be accurate. A structured blazer, good jewelry, my hair done with intention rather than the casual way I'd worn it the weekend I visited as Daniel's girlfriend. I drove to the Whitmore estate in a different car, my father's company car, which the firm used for client meetings. A black Mercedes, polished to a reflective shine. A different person opened the door this time. Helen Whitmore herself, in a dress that told me she had dressed carefully too. She looked at me. I watched the recognition move across her face in stages. The confusion first. Then the disbelief. Then something that was not quite fear but was related to it. Maya, she said. My name in her mouth like a question. Helen. I smiled. The same smile I had given her when she handed me dirty plates. It's lovely to see you again. The meeting room was Richard's study, all dark wood and leather and the particular self-seriousness of a man who had designed a room to communicate his importance. Richard was already standing when I came in, which told me Patricia had not told him the lead attendee's name. He extended his hand with his full social force. Then he recognized me. The handshake, mid-extension, underwent a complex recalibration. Maya, he said. I didn't know you were affiliated with Ashworth. My mother's family, I said pleasantly. I work with our Strategic Partnerships division. Patricia came in behind me, shook Richard's hand, settled into her seat with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Victoria was there too, in the corner. She had been invited as part of the business team. I watched her face do the same calculation her father's had done. I sat down at that table. In that house where I had carried dirty plates. Where I had been directed to check on appetizers and refresh drinks and where I had been told, on a Sunday morning, that I was not appropriately positioned for this family's world. I sat down. I opened my portfolio. And I began. I am going to be honest with you, the meeting itself was not dramatic. It was professional. It was focused. Patricia led most of the business conversation with the precision she always brought. I spoke when relevant. I asked intelligent questions. I represented the Ashworth Group the way I had been trained to represent it since I was old enough to sit in on my father's meetings. The drama was all in the silences. In the way Richard could not quite maintain his usual boardroom authority with me sitting across from him. In the way Helen, who had joined for a portion of the meeting, excused herself after 20 minutes and did not return. In the way Victoria's eyes kept moving to me with an expression that was working very hard to look neutral. When the meeting concluded and Patricia and I were gathering our materials, Richard said, Maya. I'd like to speak with you for a moment. Privately. Patricia stepped out with a look that told me she had been expecting this. Richard stood at the window of his study and looked out at his formal gardens for a moment. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. When Daniel brought you here. We didn't treat you as a guest. He turned from the window. Helen can be very traditional about these things. And I let it go on when I should have corrected it. He was apologizing because I had power now. Not because I deserved it before. I held that understanding clearly, without bitterness. Thank you for saying so, I said. I hope it won't affect. The business conversation will be evaluated entirely on its own merits, I said. That's how we operate. He nodded. Relieved in a way that told me he had been genuinely worried. I picked up my portfolio. One more thing, Richard, I said at the door. The first evening I was here, your wife directed me to carry dishes to the kitchen. I'd like you to know I noticed. And I'd like you to know that it told me something very specific about what your family values. I looked at him steadily. The business conversation will be on its merits. But I think you should know that the way people treat others when they believe there's nothing to gain is the truest information available. About anyone. I left him standing at his window. Now you're wondering, what happened with Daniel? That is a fair question. And it is the most complicated part of this story. Daniel and I talked that evening. He had called me, clearly shaken, his voice doing the thing it did when he was trying to sound calm and wasn't quite getting there. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. About your family. About the company. Because I wanted to know who you were first, I said. Without all of that information. A long pause. And who am I? He said. Quietly. Without defensiveness, which surprised me. I thought about the weekend at the estate. About Daniel across the room, deep in conversation, not watching. About the way he had kissed me at my car and told me his family had loved me. You're someone who loves your family, I said carefully. And who sometimes lets that love make you blind to what they're doing. My mother. I know what your mother did, I said. I was there. You weren't watching. Another pause. I'm sorry, he said. And here is the truth, I believed him. Daniel was not his mother. He had not treated me poorly. He had simply been absent when it mattered. That is its own problem, a real one, but it is a different problem from deliberate cruelty. We stayed together for 3 more months. We ended things in the spring, mutually, for reasons that had more to do with who we were as people than with the Whitmore estate. He was not ready for the kind of partnership I needed. I had known that in some quiet part of myself for a while. The weekend had just accelerated my willingness to look at it clearly. He was not a villain. He was a man who had been raised to look at the world in a particular way and was only beginning to understand that the view was incomplete. I hope he figured it out. The business conversation between Ashworth and Whitmore Import concluded 6 months later with a partnership agreement rather than an acquisition. My recommendation, actually. Patricia had favored the acquisition, but I felt the partnership terms were better long-term for both parties. Richard Whitmore sent me a handwritten note when the agreement was signed. Brief. Professional. And at the bottom, one sentence that was neither. Thank you for your fairness, given everything. I kept the note. Not out of sentiment. Out of principle. Helen Whitmore sent nothing. Victoria sent a LinkedIn connection request, which I accepted because I am an adult and life is long. I want to tell you what I took from all of this. Not the business lesson, that part is straightforward. I want to tell you what I took home inside myself. I thought a lot, in the months after, about the choice I made on that first Friday evening. When Helen handed me dirty plates and I took them without a word. Some people think that was weakness. It was not weakness. It was strategy, yes, but it was also something more personal than strategy. It was my father's voice in my head, make them show you who they are first. And they did. Completely, honestly, without filter, they showed me exactly who they were when they believed I had nothing they wanted. That information is priceless. It is the truest information about a person that exists. Not who they are when you have power. Not who they are when they want something from you. Who they are when they think you have nothing. I took the plates because I wanted to know. And now I know. There is one more thing. 2 years after all of this, I was at an industry event in the city. A design awards dinner. I had been nominated for a project I was deeply proud of. I was standing near the bar with a glass of champagne when a woman touched my arm. I turned. She was in her 60s. White-haired. Elegant in the specific way of women who have always known exactly who they are. "You're Maya Ashworth," she said. Not a question. "I am," I said. "I'm Eleanor Harrington," she said. "From Boston." A small smile. "I believe my family was once held up to you as an example of appropriate positioning." I stared at her. And then I laughed, a real, surprised, full laugh. "Word travels," I said. "In certain circles." She looked at me with warm, shrewd eyes. "For what it's worth, I think what you did was extraordinary. Not the business part. The plates part." "The plates part?" "Taking them," she said. "Most people in your position would have corrected the misunderstanding immediately. You let it run. You wanted the truth." She tilted her head. "That takes unusual patience. And unusual confidence." I thought about that for a moment. "My grandmother used to say," I said, "that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who knows exactly how much they're worth and has nothing to prove." Eleanor Harrington smiled. "Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was," I said. We talked for the rest of the evening. She became, in time, one of the most meaningful professional relationships of my career. And none of it would have happened if I hadn't taken the plates. So here's what I want to leave you with. The world will try to place you. Constantly. Based on your car, your clothes, your accent, your family, the first impression you make or fail to make. People will look at you and see what they expect to see, and they will treat you accordingly. Let them. Not forever. Not without limits. But long enough to learn what you need to learn. Because the people who judge you before they know you are giving you the most honest information they will ever offer. They are showing you, clearly and for free, exactly who they are. And once you know who someone really is, you are never surprised. You are only prepared.